How my dad conned a con man, then ruined his conning business. Years ago, shortly after I moved out, my dad decided he wanted to remodel his bathroom and hired a local contractor who I will refer to as DB, to do it. That fixed a clogged sink for him once. From the start my dad was extremely skeptical of contractors and did not want to get scammed, so after they agreed on the price for labor my dad asked him for an invoice for the cost of all the materials. He took said invoice to one of his co-workers whose in-law was a plumber or in construction or something to look over the list of materials and see if the quote was fair, and right off the bat DB was trying to do close to a 50% markup on the materials. So instead of paying DB's invoice my dad just bought all the materials himself, saying he knows a guy who gives him amazing discounts so DB doesn't get suspicious that my dad was onto his game. After 3 months the bathroom is not close to being done despite DB telling him it would take 2 months. My dad had to travel for work and would be gone a week, so he asked me to house sit / make sure DB shows up to work and does not steal shit. Right off the bat DB tries to be all buddy with me, but I did not like the guy and just brushed him off, asking how the bathroom was coming. Over the course of the week DB tried to upsell me on a bunch of things he said needed to be done to finish the bathroom. Most of it was electrical work which he did not have a license for. My dad filled me in before he left about what was quoted in the labor, and there was no electrical work quoted, and I told him no, just stick to the original quote. Once my dad comes back I filled him in on all the additional charges DB tried to tack on. He also did not show up for 3 days, saying he hurt his shoulder tripping over his cat. Then he tried to install the new ceiling light which he was not asked to install because we had an electrician coming to install it. After a heated discussion between DB and I, he stopped installing the ceiling light and started laying tile, during which he broke a quarter of the tiles. After this debacle my dad did some investigating and looked up DB's license and found out that not only was the license expired, it did not belong to DB. So my dad asked my brother and I to come over when he was going to confront DB about lying about his license. A very heated argument broke out when my dad refused to let DB to enter the house to collect his tool and said we would bring the tools out to him. DB then threatened to press charges against me for assault when I accidentally brushed his shoulder when I was passing him in the hallway, and I refused to apologize. After the cops showed up DB quickly tried to play the victim, but the cops told DB to collect his tools and leave. The bathroom still unfinished, but my dad did not have to pay DB for his 3 months of labor and used that money to hire real contractors to finish the bathroom. It only took them a week and a half to finish. After this my dad contacted the local news to tell them about DB being a con man. A few months later the news did an investigation story about him and they found other people DB scammed, where DB would start to work on their bathroom, but once he got paid he would cut and run, leaving the bathroom unfinished and stealing all the materials. The news then set up a sting for DB and exposed him for being a con man, and he was arrested not long after the news story aired. Edit, TLDR. Badman hired to redo dad's bathroom, tries to rip dad off. Dad fires Badman for lack of licenses and for being an asshole. Dad tells local news about Badman, local news exposes Badman, Badman eventually arrested. DB then threatened to press charges against me for assault when I accidentally brushed his shoulder when I was passing him in the hallway, and I refused to apologize. His legal fees must be through the roof whenever he goes on the subway or anything similar. Haha, yeah, and avoid any networking events with him too. Wouldn't want to rub shoulders with a guy like that. That's funny. It's a shame that your dad's bathroom was out of commission for so long. But good on him for ruining the guy. I hope DB's other victims were able to recoup some of their losses. OP replied, my dad got a shit bucket to use for emergencies, but I refused to use it. Instead I went down the street to Walmart. Please say you are kidding. After this debacle my dad did some investigating and looked up DB's license and found out that not only was the license expired, it did not belong to DB. Why wouldn't you dad look this up before he started the work? You mention your dad is already highly suspicious of contractors, then more suspicious after the 50% markup. Why delay your due diligence so long? Could have saved your dad a lot of headaches by researching the guy before hiring him. The best question is, who the duck takes 2 months to remodel a bathroom? Is it in the Taj Mahal? Are there historical issues? I just cannot for the life of me figure out why it would take this long. Demo 3 days max. Moving any electrical to desired location 1 day tops. Sheetrock walls and ceilings a day or 2. Installing new shower and hanging the door a day. First coat of paint and laying the rock a day. Tile a day. Trim out and setting fixtures a day. This is one man. There are few things as satisfying as watching an experienced journalist nail somebody like that to the wall. We have a show here in NZ called Fair Go, who do a lot of stories like this, and watching someone squirm as all their lies are read back to them is brilliant to watch. That's a BS. As a general contractor who does a lot of kitchen and bath remodels, I hate reading these types of stories. Those con men contractors make it so much harder for us legitimate guys. People are understandably nervous and it almost sets up an adversarial relationship from the jump. It's a hard spot for the homeowners to have to trust us in their homes around their kids, pets, property and valuables. We have to work 10 times harder to prove that not all tradesmen are scammers. Most of us just want to work an honest day's work, make a fair wage and leave our customers beaming about our quality, fair price and service. It makes it extra hard because a lot of those guys have an unrealistically low price too that we have to explain to customers why our price seems higher. We pay a lot for our licenses, insurances, bonds, employer taxes, workers' comp etc. I know of a con man contractor who wasn't licensed or insured. He dropped his own toolbox on his foot, broke it and sued the homeowners because it happened on their property. I heard about another who brought carpenter ants with him hidden in a jar to a roof inspection for some elderly people. He went up in the attic with his bag, they were too old to go up to, and came back down with a dustpan full of ants and rotted wood and told them they needed a bunch of work they really didn't. Sorry you guys had to deal with one of the crappy ones, but it sounds like your dad was a smart guy and exposed him real good. The best thing you can do is go with a word of mouth guy your friends recommend or use Angie's List type service with reviews, which is the next best to word of mouth. Ask to see some of their work for another customer and while there ask the customers if they had any issues or were fully happy. A friend of the family was a contractor, and he said it is standard practice to mark up the cost of materials. Is that true or is he one of the bad ones? It is standard to mark them up, yes. How much is up to the contractor? There's not really an industry standard for that. Some bigger contracting firms have big buildings, fleets of vehicles, office personnel who add costs to them but don't apply to just that one job like a toilet or the lumber that will go into that exact project but are needed to function. So those contractors have more overhead and so they may mark up materials more, but you're also getting a bigger company with a better reputation, a warranty etc. Some contractors don't mark up materials at all, but maybe they use a higher profit margin or higher labor price. In the end we all kind of figure out what works for us. So odd how skeptical your dad was of DB while ending up hiring him anyway. OP replied, my dad is also skeptical of buying things online because he thinks hackers can snatch his credit card info from the air. From the air / not using Ethernet. DB equals douchebag? Deadbeat? Decibel? OP replied, dickbag. Sounds like the whole package. This is a typical con and one I fell for a few years ago as well. Unfortunately, I had paid my DB to the tune of 6k before I realized my bathroom was never going to get finished. I took him to court and got a ruling for 14k against him but was never able to collect. I even contracted the collection to an agency and they couldn't either. What this guy did was definitely a shitty thing but isn't a 50% markup on suppliers average for contractors. Contractor here. We typically only mark up supplies the amount we get as a contractor discount. At my lumberyard I get 25% off since we buy so much. So I mark it up 25%. The price ends up the exact same to our customers except we did all the work of figuring out what's needed, ordering it, picking it up etc. At my plumbing fixture place I get 10% off so it's marked up 10%. Does it vary between jobs? Because I used to work for a HVAC company and I know they would charge $90 to $100 for a $30 part. That's excluding troubleshooting, labor and travel.